Hi, this is Teacher Joel for another session in teaching music. Today we will talk about how to develop a practice routine. My first question is, should musicians practice? Of course, we need to practice. Making music is not just knowledge, it is actually more of a skill. You don't learn it overnight, and you don't become a great musician overnight. You develop your musicianship through years and years of studying and practicing. But the big question is, why should musicians practice? In other words, what is the purpose of your practice in particular, and of making music or performing in general? Your answers to this question will affect the decisions you make as a musician, as a person, and as a Christian or Messianic. The next big question, which is related to the previous one, is what kind of musician do you want to be? Do you want to be a versatile musician? A jack of all trades but master of none? A vocalist or singer? An instrumentalist? A composer? Church musician? Or a musical director? My suggestion is you start small and take it one step at a time. Choose one skill and master it. For example, be a very good singer first. Later on, you may explore other areas like playing the piano or composing. Who should practice? All musicians should practice if they want to improve. Even composers, arrangers, and conductors practice alone in their rooms, studios, or offices. When should you practice? It depends on several factors like your civil status, what kind of learner you are, and what schedule you have in a week. A married person who is also working might only have 1 or 2 available days in a week to practice, and only for 2 hours each time. On the other hand, a high school or college student might have 5 to 6 days a week to practice, and for 4 or more hours a day. Furthermore, there are people whose minds and bodies work better at night. We call them night persons. While others work better early in the morning persons. Many musicians, though, are night persons or were forced to become night persons due to the nature of their work as a musician. According to studies, a longer practice time does not necessarily give better results. In fact, it may just be as bad as practicing for too little time. The important thing is the quality of practice, not the length of practice. Nevertheless, an aspiring musician with lots of time to spare in a week is doing himself or herself a good service by using those times to practice instead of getting into meaningless and unhealthy activities. In the end, you will just have to choose the best schedule for you to practice. But I strongly suggest that it be at least 3 times a week and at least 1 hour each time. Where should you practice and what should you bring with you? Again, this depends on your status and what is available to you. Ideally, you get to a quiet but well-ventilated and well-lit room which can house your instrument or equipment, like this one. Well, there are families who have a music room or a practice room in their houses. Some have a living room where you'll find a grand piano, a multimedia room that is soundproofed, a garage for a band, or a separate bunkhouse at the backyard. But most amateur and aspiring musicians just practice in their own bedrooms. That's good enough. Make sure also that you practice where you cannot disturb your housemates and neighbors, especially if you are a brass player or a drummer. Wherever it may be, set up the venue so that it will be conducive for learning. Use a comfortable chair. Use a music stand. If you are using a desk, you may use a desk music stand. Singers use a long mirror so that they can check for posture. Instrumentalists may use it too. If you are using an electronic instrument like this one, you might want to use some headphones or earphones so that you will be the only one hearing your sound, especially if you haven't gotten the melodies right yet. Bringing of food is not necessary, but water is essential. Bring also a small notebook and a pencil or a pen. You need to write down your daily progress and the areas you need to work on for each session. Another important thing is to always practice with a metronome. There are so many kinds of metronomes out there. There's a manual metronome, a digital metronome, and a metronome app available for smartphones. Lastly, get also a digital instrument tuner app for Android and or iOS devices. You can simply download the free versions. What I use is the Android app called Soundcore Set, which has both a tuner and a metronome, and it's free. It also has settings that can aid you in your practice like rhythm changes, a speed trainer, light signals, scales practice, a digital tuning fork, and more. If you only have 20 minutes a day and only 2 days a week free, then use them. If the only place you can practice at is at the corridor of your school or under a tree, then go ahead and practice there. The point is, you should not make your limited time and space the reasons for not practicing. Now let's get down to the meat of the matter. How should you practice and what do you practice? Number 1, I already gave you a hint earlier. You should practice with quality in mind. There is a right way of practicing. If you practice for hours but in the wrong way and with the wrong things, you will end up worse than before you started. You will just develop bad habits and you will hurt yourself. If this was sports like swimming, you will just have body aches and worse, you might drown. Second, you should also practice with a purpose. This is tied to our question above. Why should you practice? Are you preparing for an upcoming concert? A recital? A regular gig with your pop, jazz, rock, or show band? Is it for a church event or a biblical feast? Or maybe your reason or purpose can be something personal like to distress yourself or to relax, for self-expression, to spark ideas for your next novel, or to serenade a girl, so on and so forth. However, I would advise you to avoid practicing or making music for the wrong reasons or motives, such as to tease or bully someone, to spread your propaganda or something. The bottom line is, there has to be a purpose. If there is no purpose for practicing or performing, you might as well do something else that's also worthwhile, like reading the Bible, visiting the poor, sick and needy, or learning another skill like painting or video editing or something. And number 3, develop a practice routine. I am going to give you the practice routine that I use and I teach to all of my students. You cannot underestimate the power of having a practice routine. Following a routine ensures a steady progress and minimizes boredom and frustration. However, it has to be properly structured in such a way that the difficulty level is increasing gradually and not increasing exponentially, otherwise you will get burnt out. There are 10 steps to this routine, and you are advised not to skip any step and to follow the order strictly. Depending on your level, each step might take a minimum of 15 minutes and a maximum of 1 hour. But remember, the routine does not have to be completed in one sitting session only. It may be completed in 2 to 3 sessions depending on your schedule. But warming up should be done every time, as well as cooling down. Step 1. Warm up. This is the step in which you warm up and stretch the parts of your body that you will use for practicing and performing. Although the whole body is used when playing an instrument, there are certain parts that are more important depending on the instrument. Guitarists and pianists will focus on the hands. Drummers and pianists use also their feet. Singers and wind players also warm up their faces. Please see the links to the different warm-up exercises. There are links for guitar warm-up, that's my video, and also warm-up videos for piano, voice, violin, and drums. Step 2. Techniques. These are actual exercises that develop your muscle endurance, flexibility, agility, and muscle memory, as well as your tone quality, intonation, precision, and more. They are also called rudiments for winds and percussion, and vocalization for singers. These techniques prepare the mind and the heart and the body for all the possible musical passages that you may encounter as you learn songs and pieces. They also develop dexterity, patience, and discipline. Please watch the sample videos I linked there. But to my students, I usually teach them the first 3 techniques for guitar. This is technique number 1. This is to develop finger muscle memory and to be able to press the strings properly on the fingerboard. This is technique number 2. It is to develop your hammer-ons and pull-offs. Technique number 3, also known as the spider technique, to develop your finger independence. Take note, these techniques should be practiced in a slow tempo first and then gradually build up to the fastest tempo that you can perform. Example in technique number 1. Step 3. The scales. Scales are the building blocks of melodic passages as well as the chords. Learning the scales will help you develop a sense of key and will also make it easier to execute melodies, even the fast ones. For both the scales and chords or arpeggios, I suggest that you follow the sequence based on the circle of fifths or the line of fifths, starting with the key of C. If you look at your chart, you will see there the circle of fifths. You may start learning all the keys in the key of C, all the chords in the key of C, and then after that you learn all the chords in the key of G on the right of C, and then all the chords in the key of F, and then all the chords in the key of D, all the chords in the key of B flat, so on and so forth. So there is a gradual progression of learning. There are many kinds of scales. The most common are the major, the minor, the chromatic, and the pentatonic scales. I urge you to study the blues, oriental, Jewish, and other scales as well. Furthermore, you may also study and practice the modes like the Dorian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, etc. On your copy is the C major scale, which sounds like this. So as you can see, the major scale is just your Do, Re, Mi. You also have there a copy of the A major scale, which is done on the 5th fret here. You also have there some guides on the chords and arpeggios for the piano, the keyboard, and sample videos that you may follow. The drums have no pitches, but there are pitched percussion instruments like the marimba and xylophone, and they will have scales as well. Here's an example of a minor scale. The minor scale is very common in Messianic songs or Jewish songs. Here's a pentatonic scale in D major. Here's a minor pentatonic scale in A, a very common one. Here's a chromatic scale. And here's the blues scale in A. In D. And in E. Now here's a Jewish scale in E. See, scales are really interesting. Step 4. Chords and arpeggios. Just like the scales, this is the time to learn and practice the different qualities of chords, including the 4 primary ones: major, minor, augmented, and diminished. The secondary chords are the major and minor sixths, the major 7th, the minor 7th, and the dominant 7th. The tertiary chords include the compounds such as the 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths, and a whole lot more, especially common to jazz. You might want to prioritize the chords that you will actually be using in your repertoire or set list. Follow also the circle of fifths or the line of fifths. Chords occur when 2 or more notes are played at the same time. Arpeggios are just chords in which notes are played successively, either ascending or descending. That's an arpeggio, or a broken chord. You have there a chord chart for guitar. There are many other chord charts that you can search for or buy. Take note, even if there's a given chord on a chord chart, it may have a different figure in another chord chart. Each chord can be played 2 or 3 ways. There's also another sample chord chart for you for piano. Do you know that violins can also play chords? So you can check out the website there. You can also check out the video examples on how to play chords and arpeggios on guitar, on other instruments, in your voice. Step 5. Strumming exercises or rhythmic exercises for other instruments. This is when you actually start making music. This may also involve chord progressions. Strumming is when you sweep the thumb or a pick up or down across the strings. There are many different patterns to learn and choose from. You can watch the videos there for the different strumming patterns. But usually, when you start strumming the guitar, you only play strumming down consistently 4 counts each time. And then eventually you will learn to strum up as well. And then you will learn to strum alternating down and up. When you are already comfortable with the strumming patterns, you can experiment on other strumming patterns and other more complicated ones, like this. Step 6. Plucking and picking exercises or accompaniment exercises for other instruments. This may actually be included in the technique phase in step 2. However, the difference is that unlike those in the technique phase, these exercises are more musical in approach and are no longer too technical. This may also involve chord progressions. For bowed string instruments like the violin and cello, they focus more on the bowing exercises. Plucking may be similar to arpeggios. The only difference is that in plucking, notes may not just be ascending or descending. They may have different patterns. Check out the websites and the videos linked there. Here's just a few examples of plucking. Step number 7. Songs, pieces, repertoire, or lineup. This is the part when you actually play the songs or pieces that you need to learn and prepare for your next engagement, whether it be a religious or secular activity. I suggest that you build a repertoire that will develop you as a musician holistically. Therefore, practice your skills in playing the melody and the accompaniment, or your role as the soloist or as an accompanist. Solos involve a lot of scales, while accompaniments involve a lot of chords and arpeggios. Take note of problem areas. Write them down. Try to find solutions to those problems. You may use these problem-solving steps. Step 1. Define the problem. Step 2. Think of several possible solutions. This part, you might need to seek help from an experienced musician. Choose the best solution, step 3. Number 4, implement that solution. And step 5, assess the results. You might need to go back to step 3. Even building up your repertoire should be systematic or structured. In general, I would let my students start out by learning 2-chord songs. That is, songs that involve only 2 chords from start to finish. I assign songs of different key signatures, time signatures, tempos, and styles. Then, after they've learned those songs and got comfortable with the chords, they move on to 3-chord songs, 4-chord songs, 5-chord songs, so on and so forth. I have there a list of easy Christian guitar songs that you may learn. I also provided a sample video for Gadol Elohai. Step 8. Other special techniques and skills. Learn other instrument or voice-specific lessons. There are many lessons that cannot be applied to all instruments or voices. There are specific lessons to specific voices and instruments. And there are many books and free websites that you can learn from if you don't have a teacher. YouTube has a lot, but not everything in there is of high quality. I would recommend the websites I wrote there for you to learn these music lessons. You may also learn other skills to develop your musicianship in general, like songwriting. Learn to write a song or compose. Ear training. Develop your ear so you can discriminate between notes, scales, chords, and arpeggios. You develop your sight singing as well in note reading. And you may also develop your improvisation. Improvisation is very important in musicians. Step 9. Play anything you want to play. Just play around and experiment. Experiment with chords, new scales, and unique or even weird melodies. Try out uncommon chord progressions. Many great songs have been composed out of experimentation. And step number 10, cool down. This is very similar to warm-up exercises. This can be thought of as the partial combination of the techniques and the warm-up phase. However, the goal this time is to bring the mind, heart, and body to a resting state, not the active state. You may use the same techniques as above, but you play gradually slowing down instead of speeding up, and then end with the hand and body stretching. Just like warm-up exercises, I suggest that you do this every practice session. And there you have it, my tips and advice to developing a practice routine. Religiously follow this routine and prayerfully consider your knowledge and skills in music. You will be the musician that God had intended you to be sooner than you expected. What you may do now with your free time is to choose from any of the following activities. You may view this video again to make sure you did not miss any detail. You may pause, rewind anytime. Reflect on the questions above and answer them carefully. Number 3, you may watch the videos linked here, especially those related to your voice or instrument. Or, number 4, you may start planning out your practice routine. Example, what days and times you will practice each week. What venue. What resources will you use, and write down your goals. Your goals should be SMART goals. This is Teacher Joe will say, thank you and shalom.